Welcome to the Live, Work and Settle in Australia Skill Migration webinar. My name is Anya Gunasekara and I will be your host today. Australian Migration Consultants provides comprehensive immigration advices to clients located throughout Australia as well as throughout the world. We help you to migrate to Australia with visa and immigration advice. With us, you can expect expert advice and responsible solutions. We take the time and care to ensure all applicants have the best possible chance of success. I hope today's session will help all of you gather valid and important information on Australian migration in terms of skill visas. Let me brief you on today's lineup. Firstly, we have a detailed session on skilled migration by a registered MARA consultant. We also will have details on assessing bodies by our senior migration officer. Also on a session of about PTE, the Pearson Test of English by a certified PTE coach. Finally, we will also have a Q&A session. So without taking much time, let me hand over the session to our Managing Director, as well as the registered MARA consultant, Mr. Manjula Kulatunga. Over to you, Manjula.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we do.
All right, perfect. Hi, everyone. Good evening to you. Thank you very much for taking your time to come and join us today to look at the possibilities of migrating to Australia. Now, before I start the proceedings, let me just tell you one thing, right? Uh, but it's a fantastic evening here in Melbourne today, and there are many various visa options that we are going to touch through very briefly, and then I will take you through the various the requirements that you have to have in order to make your dream come true to get into Australia. So if you have any questions, please feel free to jump in and ask you at the there's an option where you can type in your questions, or you can directly call Anya and shoot your questions as well. And at the end of it, we will take all of your questions and give the answers as well. Now, before we start my talking about Australian migration, let me just tell you, Australian migration is a long-term investment, right? It's not a short-term investment because it takes time, and you need to understand when you're applying for Australian migration, you need to go through. There are certain phrases that has to go through in order to become a successful migrant. So you're doing the first step, which is understanding what the migration process is all about, right? And we always tell our clients, before you spend your money and effort, please spend your energy in understanding what the migration process is, because that is the key to become a successful migrant. And if you look at how can you get into Australia, there are so many visa options. As I have listed here, you can come here as a visitor. In visiting, there are various visa options. Then you can come in as a family or a partner visas, as a family member of a member who's living here, to come and visit them, come and live with them, or permanently move in with them. Or you can come in here as a student or a training visa options. Then you have working and skill visas. So working and skill visas are the ones that are most popular, and I think majority of the participants who are here today with us are looking for more details about working and skill visa options, because this is where any individual from anywhere in the world can be satisfying the criteria to come into Australia as a skilled migrant. So that is where we are going to explore and see what are the possibilities, what are the new laws that are coming up, and then what are the things that we need to satisfy in terms of getting your visa options. Then you have business and other visas. So these are for people who are successful businessmen, who have been entrepreneurs, who are running their own businesses, or who have been working in organizations at a higher the senior management levels, and have a wealth of a pool of wealth into their name, who can then transfer that into Australia and call Australia as a business owner, investor, or coming here as a retirement, or in various other visa options, right? And let us just look at the process in terms of getting into Australia through the skill and migration, skill and work visa options, right? When you are looking at coming into Australia as a skill migrant, mainly there are uh, four visa subclasses, right? First one is called the subclass 189, where you get the permanent residency, where the if you satisfy your skill is something that is needed in Australia in the most wanted. We call it well, different skill. Every skill or every occupation is identified in the Australian skill list, right? And in that list, every occupation has a sort of an cap, we call it, the number of places available for a financial year, right? So good thing is the financial year 2020 and 2021, the Australian government is going to revert back to what they had in year 2019 and 2020 intake, right? Because 2020 and 2000 the 2020 the 19 and 20 intake, they had a reduced number of places due to the pandemic, obviously, right? They reduced the entire intake by about 70%, right? And there are indications that they are going to lift the ban, and they are going to go up to the previous intake levels, so which is a good thing, right? And the first thing is that, so first of all, you need to understand what is your skill set, right? And identify whether your occupation is in which particular list, whether your occupation is listed on the short term list or the long term list, right? And then you will see, okay, there are certain occupations that are listed on this list, right, are eligible to apply for certain visa subclasses. So no matter which visa subclass that you can apply for, the minimum cutoff mark is has now become 65 points, right? And in that sense, if you are applying for now I'll just very quickly brief you the subclasses, the differences, right? The best visa that you can get as a skilled migrant coming into Australia is called the subclass 189. So 189 is where you get the permanent residency, which is a 5-year residency visa that is given to you before you come into the country when you are in your native country. So you have a date to make your first arrival into the country, and then you come in, activate your visa, and then if you want, you can go back and come back in another day to come and start living in Australia. So with a subclass 189 visa, you get a 5-year permanent residency for you and your the other applicants, secondary applicants, which is your spouse and the children, right? And from the time you come into the country, they will get free education, the medical system access, and if they're eligible for childcare benefits, so on and so forth. So then the next category is called subclass 190. So subclass 190 is called the state sponsored visa. When you have when your occupation is on the list where you can apply for a subclass 190, how it is working now, you can see uh, from, like, if you take Australia, there are 7 different states. Australia has different states. So as example, you have Victoria, the city is called Melbourne. So their requirement, the skill requirement list in Victoria is different to the skill requirement list in South Australia. So that's where the capital is Adelaide. And then you have another state called Western Australia, where the capital city is Perth. And then you have Northern Territory, capital city is called Darwin. Then you have Queensland, where the capital city is called Brisbane, and Sydney, the territory or the state is called New South Wales, and then Australian Capital Territory, Canberra is the actually where you have the Australian Parliament and everything else. And then you have another small island just behind Australia, just below Australia, like a dot, same the size of a like Sri Lanka. It's called Tasmania. So that's also another separate state itself, right? In Australia, even though we have a federal government that covers everything, we have state governments in each of these states, because each of these states, their economic um, proceedings are totally different to the other. They are, as example, if I'm living in Victoria, I live in Melbourne, right? When I'm driving my my vehicle number plates are different to what I get in New South Wales or in Perth. So I have different driver's license. So you have different tax file numbers, and then different tax regimes as well. So even though they are all in one country, they all run like separate countries within a country. I hope you get the idea. So because of that, so each of these states have different skill sets that are driving their desires. Because some states are more skewed towards production, some are more into mining, some are more into tourism, some are more into dairy farming, some are more into production of wine, some are more into the natural resources. So likewise, each of these, some of these states have their specific requirements. So that's why this each state have their own occupation requirement list, right? So when your occupation is on one of those lists, and when the state is willing to give you a sponsorship, then you get a subclass 190 visa, right? The difference between a subclass 189 and a 190 visa is that when you get a 185, you can decide where you 189, you can decide where you want to go and reside. But with a subclass 190, one of the states will give you the opportunity, and then there is an obligation once you get the 5-year visa for you to come and live at least 2 years of the 5 years in the state that gave you the sponsorship, which is a obligation, right? And so that's the main difference between the two. Other than that, you still get the same facilities and same privileges as a 189 visa holder. Then you move on to, those are called the permanent visas as a skill migrant. Then you have temporary visas, right? So these temporary visas are given to people who need more support in terms of boosting up their uh, point system. We will go into the point system and understand as well, right? Because as I said, for anyone to be eligible to apply, in my slide it says 60 points. Actually, it's now 65 points, and the 65 points can be boosted with this new visa subclass called subclass 491, which is a temporary visa, right? So depends on where your occupation is in demand, in which visa subclass that is in demand for, that you're eligible for. You can decide, okay, what is the state that you are going to apply for, and whether you are going to apply for, whether you're eligible to apply for as a permanent visa resident or a temporary visa resident. So when you apply for subclass 491, which is a temporary visa residency, you still get a 5-year visa, but it's called a temporary resident. What happens when you come as a subclass 491 visa holder, you have to come and live in the state or the territory that's going to give you the sponsorship for minimum of 3 years, right? And satisfy the criteria for you to convert your visa or get your visa to a permanent residency. right? So first they give you a temporary residency, then they give you the permanent residency. So that is the difference between a temporary residency and a permanent residency. Now, on the same class, there are many other employee sponsored visa categories as well, which are again temporary visas, right? So, this is where you find you might have an organization that you are currently working in, and they have a branch office in Australia, or they might be having head office in Australia, who might be interested in employ you or sponsor you to come and work for them, right? Or you might apply for some vacancies in Australia, or you might successful in securing a job opportunity in Australia. When that happens, the organization will be able to sponsor your application and give you a temporary visa. Again, what you and your family can move into Australia, but you can only work for the employer who has given you the sponsorship, right? So the first thing is to check whether your occupation is on the list, whether you have an occupation that is on the list. Next thing is to identify, okay, which visa that I'm going to satisfy my criterias, and then which state or the territory that is going to have the demand for my list of my occupation, and see which occupation that I can have the highest number of points, and then decide, okay, which visa category that I am most suitable to apply for me to get my visa application. Now, in saying that, there can be a situation where your occupation is available to apply for all three or four visa categories, right? But then you have to look at which visas are getting the priority. Now, as example, at the moment, the employee sponsored visas get the highest priority, and the next priority comes to subclass 491 visa applicants, right, which is a temporary visa. And if you know the nitty-gritty of that, then I mean, okay, you are still eligible to apply for your subclass 189, which is the permanent residence visa. But the 491, virtue of the fact that it's getting priority, and if you are in a critical spot where your age is going to cross and you are going to lose points, or your family circumstances or personal circumstances are different, where the children are growing up faster, and you don't want to risk the time waiting for the other visa to come, best thing is to opt to a visa where you can get the process started straight away. So once you establish all that, your next step is to go and get a skill assessment done. So the Australia has identified various authorities or the bodies who can study your work experience and the education qualifications and tell you your skill is equivalent to a person who's carrying out the same job in Australia. So down in another 2 or 3 slides, I'm going to go into more details of that, and I will get a specialist in the business with us who Deirdre will come and explain that area of the skill assessment for you in detail, right? So then the next thing is you need to understand whether you have your language skills all sorted, right? Because to get into Australia, you need to be able to score your points. You have to prove your language skills as well. So that is where you be completing your PTE or IELTS examinations, and you need to have your scores in your hand. With all that, only you will be submitting your expression of interest. So expression of interest is the easiest thing to do. But before you do that, you have to do your homework. You need to understand what is your occupation, most suitable occupation. Now, in a situation, you may be working in, say, as example, say that you are accountant, right? You have completed your studies and you have come out of and started working in the accounting profession. But over the period of time, you may have worked as a internal auditor, external auditor, team leader, and then assistant accountant, financial manager, or financial consultant, or now as a group finance manager. So you need to understand, okay, what is the occupation that I'm going to use? because that has a big difference in terms of where you are going to get the highest number of points for your work experience. And then you need to understand, okay, if I select this occupation, will that have the same demand as the other occupation that I can select for? Because one person may be qualified for more than one or two occupations to apply for. It is not the designation that you are carrying today, it is the work experience that you have, which you have done over a period of time. There again, as example, there can be the person who has done the we'll say the science degree, but today he is in marketing, right? But if he is in marketing in a the medical equipment organization, definitely his qualification is a relevant qualification. He doesn't have to have a marketing qualification to be qualified as a marketing manager, right? Because his science degree, because of the virtue of the fact that the area of expertise is needed in that, so it doesn't matter. So you can mix and match qualifications. You don't have to work in the same industry where you have completed your studies. So that's another key area. So most important thing is the work experience that you carry and how that can be related to the available occupations, right? And once you do that, you lodge your the expression of interest. Then you have to wait till the department or the state government or the territory give you offer to apply, right? Then they will give you an invitation. You'll be invited to lodge your application. Then only you can lodge your application. And then once they go through your documentation, and if there is no problems in the documentations after the verification process, they will definitely let you lodge your application, right? And this is the process which I just went through with you in step by step, where how to identify the skill and which occupation to select, and how to get your documentation ready, and then go through the application process. When you are going through a skill assessment process, there are more than one information that you need to understand, because you need to prove that you have had the relevant work experience. So the virtue of the fact that you have held a occupation or a title doesn't mean you are going to get a positive skill assessment. You got to make sure that the skill set that you have, that you are possessing, is equivalent to the Australian occupation, or the person who's doing the same, carrying out the same job in Australia. So when you are getting service letters, you need to make sure that that is spelled out in a way that is similar to the Australian the employers that are doing the same job functions, right? So these are the most popular skill assessments that we see in today's the the skill assessment process. I think this is a good time for me to invite Deirdre, who's been with us for such a long time, and she has been at one time the country manager for our Qatar office as well, and she has handled more than 1,000 skill assessments, I'm sure, and there's no better person than her to give you share the information what you need to look at in terms of going through your skill assessment. Anya, I'll throw it back to you so you can get Deirdre in here.
Thank you, Manjula. Let's not take much more time. Moving on to the skill assessment or the assessing bodies, we'd like to invite Ms. Deirdre Mendes, our senior consultant at Australian Migration Consultants, to take over. Over to you, Deirdre.
Thank you, Anya. Good evening, everybody. I will just go through some of the skill assessments that we work with. And it is like when you, the first stage in the skill migration process is nominating an occupation and assessing your skills and qualifications, assessing your skills, which is your qualifications and work experience. The different occupations are assessed by different assessing bodies, and the skill assessment helps to generate points for your employment for the Department of Immigration. Most of the positive assessments are valid for 3 years, and if not otherwise defined. And I will brief you through few of the bodies that we work with. And VETASUS is the assessing body. It assesses a wide variety of occupations, which ranging from managerial occupations to trade occupations. And in VETASUS, your qualifications and your work experience are both assessed. And when your occupation is assessed through VETASUS, you don't have to show your English language ability, which is your IELTS at this stage of the application. And the minimum requirement is your qualifications and 1 year minimum of experience in the relevant field. And few of the general professional occupations assessed by VETASUS are chemists, internal auditors, social professionals, university lecturers, hotel or motel managers, customer service managers, so forth. And through VETASUS, there are around 25 trade occupations which is assessed as well. This includes professionally skilled occupations with proper certifications like electricians, welders, plumbers, cooks, motor mechanics, so forth. And the processing time that is taken by VETASUS is usually 12 to 14 weeks. And they do have a priority base of 10 business days. And if you want the Australian Computer Society, which is the designated authority for ICT skilled occupations. And these are mainly IT related job categories, and which are few ICT business analysts, ICT support engineers, software testers, developer programmers, and network administrators, so forth. And here too, your English language ability is not required at this stage of the assessment, and your qualifications and your experience are assessed through ACS. And when assessed through ACS, you need to ensure you meet the proper criteria according to the occupation. And according to your qualification, the requirement of experience differs. If you don't hold any required qualifications, you can apply on a recognition of prior learning, which will require a minimum of 8 years of relevant work experience. And the processing time that is taken for this assessment is about 8 to 10 weeks, and they don't have a priority processing base. And if you see for engineering occupations, the Engineers Australia is the assessing authority for the engineering occupations. When your occupation is in the engineering field, you need to fulfill your English language ability. That is, you need to sit for your IELTS or PTE or a relevant English ability test, which will require a 6 in each band for IELTS for the assessment. And if you see on PTE, it will be 50 each. And for most of the qualifications, you need to submit a competency demonstration report, which is a CDR report, to get your qualifications assessed. The processing time depends on the load of applications, and they have a fast track of 20 working days. And few of the occupations, if I mentioned, will be like civil engineers, electrical engineers, telecommunications network engineers, building and engineering technicians, and civil engineering draft persons. Those are few of the occupations. And there's another body, which is the Institute of Managers and Leaders, which is the assessing authority for senior managerial occupations. And these are managers who hold a senior managerial position in the organization, such as chief executive officers or managing directors, corporate general managers, sales and marketing managers, supply and distribute managers, human resource managers, so forth. So when your occupation is in the senior managerial line, you will need to fulfill the required criteria according to the level of occupation. And the requirement differs in each level. Uh, we will be guiding you to make your documentations ready accordingly. And here also, your English language ability is not required at this stage of the application. And the processing time will be 8 weeks, and they do have a fast track of 4 weeks. And the assessing body for the accountants, we have 3 registered assessing authorities, which are Institute of Public Accountants, Chartered Practicing Accountants, and Chartered Accountants. And when your occupation is in the accounting field, you will need to sit for your IELTS or your PTE, which will be if you are in, if you sit for the IELTS, it will be the academic in 7 each in each band. And if it's the PTE, it's 65 each. And only your qualifications are assessed here, and you will have to be qualified in completing 9 out of the 12 core subjects. And the processing time will be 10 business working days, and they have a fast track of 2 business working days. And few of the occupations are accountant, general accountants, external auditors, management accountant, and finance manager, so forth. Apart from these assessing bodies, there are Medical Board of Australia, that is for doctors and for nurses, and nurses are assessed by Australian Nursing and Midwifery Accreditation Council, and quantity surveyors are assessed by Australian Institute of Quantity Surveyors. So these different assessing bodies have their own way of assessing the required documentation and information according to their own process. And it will be our responsibility to make sure that you meet with the required information and documentation, and that your application is decision ready for a positive outcome. So if you have any questions regarding the assessing bodies occupations, you can type your questions and we will answer them after the session. And I will hand over to Anya to take on the next session of the meeting. Over to you, Anya.
Thank you very much, Deirdre. Now we can move on to the next session of Manjula's presentation. Over to you, Manjula.
Thank you, Anya. Deirdre, fantastic explanation. I think people would have got a bit of understanding of what is the minimum requirements that are needed for them to be able to apply for its skill assessment. Now, let's have a quick look at and see a points calculation. I'm going to do a bit of a challenge to everyone, right? I'm going to, you can do a self-assessment and see how many points you are going to get at the end of these discussion. So if everyone can grab a pen and a paper, I'm going to take you through in each and every criteria where they are giving points. So you can score for yourself and see at the end of it how many points you are going to be landed with. So that will be a good starting point. And then you can go back and say, okay, if I think my skill is this, okay, whether that skill is on the list, which I said, and which occupation list it's going to be in, who's going to give the sponsorship, and which visa category that you can apply for. And then you can go down the path in, ticking all those boxes. First one's to see that whether you are in the area where you can play this game, right? Okay, our goal is to see whether we can achieve 65 points, right? Now, first set of points are coming for your age factor. If you're between the age of 18 to 25, give yourself 25 points. If you're between 25 to 32 years, give 30 points. If you're between 33 to 40 years, give yourself 25 points. And 40 to 45 years, give yourself only 15 points. Now, if you're above 45, unfortunately, you are not eligible to apply for general skill migration category, but there are other categories which you may be eligible to apply for, right? As example, if you are planning to apply as a spouse or a partner, there's no age requirement, right? So don't be disheartened. You can still achieve your objective. So get your partner to be the main applicant, or now don't what do you call that, get other ideas. But so if you are at 45 or below, you still have opportunity to get your you are still eligible to apply under the skill migration, right? And the next requirement is your language requirements, right? So these language tests are most popular one is IELTS, and then you have PTE as well. And we have a very eloquent the presenter of IELTS who will come after my presentation to give you a bit of understanding how the PTE is going to work in this space, and how the language skills can be obtained, or the assessments going to take place. Now, to tell you now, any of these language tests have 4 components, right? Now, IELTS is the one that I'm going to take it as an example because it's very easy to understand. Now, in this IELTS, if you take it, you have speaking, reading, writing, and listening, right? Each of these components are marked by out of 10, right? If you manage to score 7 of each of these 4 components, you can score yourself 10 points. If you can score 8 and above, then you can claim 20 points. So wherever that you think where your language ability is, you can put a 10 or a 20, right, against your English language skills. Then we are looking at the skilled employment experience. Now, this is a bit of a tricky area, because say that you are a person who's in marketing, right, and who has in the work experience for more than 10-12 years. So you have started yourself probably as a the sales executive, worked yourself through to become a brand manager, territory manager, area manager, sales manager, and national sales manager, so on and so forth, right? So then you will be deciding, okay, where am I going to get my points from? So which occupation am I to select? Because it depends on the occupational the time period that you spend in each occupation. You can decide, okay, where you're falling into, right? So you may be a general manager. So before you becoming a general manager, you may have sat in so many other occupations. Today you may be HR manager, but then before that you may have been working in the recruitment, or you may have been working in skill development areas, right? So there are so many related areas. So it depends on which area is going to give you the maximum number of points in terms of work experience. That's the one that you can take. But there again, there can be a place where you have been sitting and working for about good 8 years in an occupation, right, where you can get 15 points for your work experience. But you may be now being promoted and holding an occupation that has so much demand, even without claiming the previous occupation's points, that you can get your migration through. So that's the trick where you need to be vigilant about, right? So if you're an IT professional, you go through so many phases, like you come in as a graduate apprentice, and then you go and do a coder, then you become a QA, then you become a system, well, you become a developer, then you go into systems analyst, architect, so many other occupations, right? So then you need to take a breather and map yourself and see where can I claim most number of points that has the highest demand for the occupation, right? Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you when it comes to skill employment experience, you got to have a minimum of 3 years of work experience to claim 5 points, right? Now, for you to be eligible to apply for skill migration, you actually need to have only 12 months of work experience. If you can still get the required number of points and without having to claim employment points, it's okay. Because if you have worked only 12 months, that's the minimum requirement. On the 13th month, you are eligible to apply for a skill assessment and apply for your migration pathway, even without having to be able to claim points, because you got to be working in the same occupation for 3 years if you're an offshore applicant, right? I'm talking about now today, my emphasis is for if anyone who's applying out of Australia, right? So which are we call the offshore applicants, right? You got to have a minimum of 3 years of work experience to get 5 points. If you have 5 years of work experience, you can claim 10 points. If you have 8 years of work experience, you can claim 15 points, right? And then moving on, the next one is the educational qualifications. With the educational qualifications, at least you have to have a minimum of a graduate diploma, right? They are a minimum of a 2-year diploma or a work experience. We call them the RPLs, recognition of prior learning, right? There can be some people who have so many years of work experience where you can write to certain organizations in Australia. There are universities that assess your work experience and then they will give you a skill assessment because you have worked in the certain occupation for over a period of years, and the breadth of experience will amount into a certain certification. They say, okay, right, you are eligible to get a diploma, right, or a advanced diploma. So you need a minimum of a diploma certificate of a minimum of 2 years, and if that is what you have, right, and you can claim minimum of 10 points. Now there are a lot of people in the subcontinent where they directly do masters without doing a what do you call a bachelor's degree, right? So those masters also are eligible to claim a minimum of 10 points, right? And there are certain occupations where you can apply for a skill assessment without any qualifications. And if you get a positive skill assessment, the virtue of the fact that you get a positive skill assessment, you still get 10 points as well, right? And then if you have a bachelor's degree, which is a minimum of 3 years and above, you will get 15 points. And if you have a doctorate or a PhD, then you can claim 20 points. Now, there can be someone who has a diploma, bachelor's degree, and a MBA and a PhD. Now, that doesn't mean he can claim all his points. So you always have to go back and pick the points from the awarding certificates that gives you the highest number of points. There's another thing, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe when you're applying, your occupation that you're applying for may not be directly relevant to the occupation that you have. As example, you may be applying in a we'll say sort of coming from an IT background, right? And then because of the virtue of the fact that you have been in the IT space for more than 8 to 10 years, you have that work experience to get a skill assessment as a systems analyst. But you have a bachelor's degree, we'll say in singing, right? So it doesn't matter. So your skill occupation can be still in the system administration, but you can still claim the points for the what you got for as for your singing or bachelor's in arts, right? You can still claim your points in that capacity for 15 points. So what I'm trying to stress here, your occupation and the qualification does not have to be in a line, right? So whichever the ones that gives you the highest points, you can take it, right? And then say that there can be someone who has already studied in Australia and then gone back overseas. So if you have completed your studies in Australia for minimum of 2 years, you get extra 5 points. And then once you complete your studies, there's another opportunity where you can complete another professional year, which we call a job ready program. So people, especially people who are completing their accounting, IT, and various other fields, even for legal practitioners, they can go for a professional year in Australia. So if you complete that, then they will give another 5 points as well, right? And then this is now those are the main frame points structure, right? Not only that, there are points for your community language skills as well, right? So we call it the bilinguality. Supposing if you have studied the bachelor's degree in your native language, maybe in Arabic, in Sinhalese, Tamil, or anything, not in English, right? And then the virtue of the fact that you have your the tertiary studies in your native language, you can claim 5 points. People who don't have that, what they can do, there's an exam called NATI which you can sit for, and where you will get the opportunity to translate from whatever your native language to English or English to a native language, and then you can claim 5 points once you get through that exam. So not only that, there are other opportunities as well. Now, say that you are a student who now have completed your studies in Australia, but in a regional area, and then if that is the case, you can claim further 5 points because the virtue of the fact that you studied in a regional Australia, right? Now, most of those Australian study experience are not valid for any of our clients who are I mean, most of the clients who are not studied in Australia. I'm just saying it in case, you might get a light bulb and say, okay, today I'm not qualified to apply. I might pursue the option of becoming a student in Australia. So then you can keep in mind, if I do my studies in a regional Australian university, I can get extra points. And so that might help you to pursue your migration dream. And then, the main areas that we are looking at in today's, what we are doing is age, language skills, skilled employment experience, and qualifications. Apart from these ones, where are the other places that we can get points, right? The next one is where you can turn to your partner, right? When you're applying for subclass, the 491 visa, right? If your partner also equally qualified, in the sense in their own right, they are also below 45 years of age, has occupation that is on the list, and can get a positive skill assessment and get more than 6 for their IELTS, so they will be able to contribute 10 points towards the application, right? And then if you're a single person, if you don't have a partner, they'll give you 10 points as well, virtue of the fact that you're single, right? Now, so these are other ways that you can add value to your application, right? Moving on, ladies and gentlemen, so that would have given you a bit of an idea how you can calculate or do a self-assessment of the number of points. Now, this is the army of our team, right, who are with the Australian Migration Consultants. We are in business for last 12 years and who have helped more than 2,000 families to successfully migrate into Australia. I'm going to give you one or two tips in this slide. Ladies and gentlemen, it's no matter whether you use our services or anyone else's services. If you are looking to migrate to Australia, it's very advisable for you to use a MARA registered consultant. MARA registered consultants are the only ones that are authorized in Australia to offer advice to people on their migration pathways. We are a highly regulated bunch of people who have a code of conduct, and then we have to maintain various industry standards and obligations. We have to have our indemnity insurance. When we give advice, we have to give it to you in writing. And then if something that happens, you get the EPIC body will look after your interests as well. So there is a Australian Migration Registration Authority, which is you can just jump online and you can get an understanding of what they do and what they represent for. And then whoever the person who's offering you the service of helping you to migrate to Australia, always go only with a Mara registered person. That is just a 2 cents for you to understand who can support you with your application, because there are so many the bogus operators, unfortunately, and I have seen them all in the last 12 years. And it's better for you to get understanding and move on with the using the correct partners to help you to go through your application process. Because the good thing when it comes to Australian migration, it's a very black and white thing. Either you qualified or you don't qualify. There are no ifs and buts, right? If you qualified, it's a matter of time that you go through one step and the other to achieve your end goal. Because as I said at the start, Australian migration is a long-term investment. It's not something that you can decide today and tomorrow it's going to turn up, because over a period of time, there are so many hurdles that you have to go through. First thing is to make sure whether your occupation is on the list, whether your occupation is now available for sponsorship, which state is sponsoring, then which visas that you can apply for. Then you have to go through all this and apply for your expression of interest, then get the state to give you a sponsorship, and then only you can apply your visa application. So no matter what, it takes minimum, we call it 12 to 18 months before your visa application can come through. So you have to have patience to go through this. That's why the I mean, if you take any given year, Australia received more than 80,000 applications, right? And for this financially, I think they're opening up for 79,000 applicants to come into Australia. But they received about more than 3 times of that many applications. But so many applicants fall off halfway through, right? Because they don't have the persistence, and they don't keep their eyes on the price to make sure, dig deep and wait till to see them through every stage of the way until they get the residency visa come their way. One more advice, ladies and gentlemen, please don't ever give, because there are only two reasons for someone to fail their application. One is if you have given bogus information. Second is the law has changed. If the law is changing, before it changes, the lot of information will come into you, right, beforehand. I mean, during this pandemic, actually, there are so many the legal there are so many changes that took place into migration, but that is so unfortunate. But still, people came to know about it, and there were people like about if you were in that certain cutoff age limits, unfortunately, you are not able to come back and reapply. But then the people who were in these certain other timelines were able to come back and reapply as well. So if you look at the Australian migration consultants process, is very clear, right? We first have events like this where we educate everyone about the process, right? All the information that I given to you is available online as well. Just jump onto Google and then you can just help yourself. This information is freely available through the Department of Immigration website. Please refer to the Department of Immigration website, because that's the only place where you can get up-to-date valid information, right? Even if you take our website, I mean, I don't have the website developer 100% sitting there to update the website to give you the up-to-date information, right? It's not possible, because it's a different thing. In Australia, what happens is the regulations can change through instrument. So the authorized delegate, when they see the processes are not working, it's not like it has to go through the parliament, do the whole 360 degrees to get it amended. No, it's just a matter of a paper. Law can change, and then they will update the legislation straight away. So always refer it back to the department's website, right? Because that is that's where the buck stops, right? And so with that, you can find a lot of information. It's free information. Anyone can log in and get this information as well. But then if you're ready and you want to pursue to the next stage and you are serious about your migration application process, and then talk to people like us or who are MARA registered, who can really help you as well to see through the progress. So first thing that we do, if someone comes to us and say, this is what we want to do, we bring them all in, have a sort of a event like this, educate them. Then if you qualify by looking at your the CVs, we can assess your eligibility, right? But that's because we look at your occupation, we look at your work experience, we look at your the age and the qualifications, and then we can see, okay, there's some light at the end of the tunnel, so we can explore the possibilities of this applicant. When we have that confidence, we will invite you to come for a one-to-one consultation. One-to-one consultation could take up to a minimum of 45 minutes to 1 hour, depends of the complication of your case, right? That depends on the number of applicants that you have and where you have worked, how easy that you can establish your work experience and the qualifications, and then the experience letters, service letters, so on and so forth, right? Once we do that, that is where we build the foundation of your application process, right? We will give you issue a letter of advice if we are okay to take over your case, because we can't handle every case. No, there are we have to, because when you become a client of ours, you got to be comfortable with us, we got to be comfortable with you, because my way of working may be too different to how you work as well, right? So if we are satisfied to take you on board, we will invite you to become a client of us. Then we offer you a letter of advice which will in detail explain which visas that you qualify for, and why you qualify, how you qualify, how many points that you get, which states are giving you the sponsorship, which visas that are eligible for you, and then what are the advantages and disadvantages of these visas, how long it will take, and how much it will cost. So the basic information will definitely given to you in writing, so you can make educated judgment. Then we can have a discussion. You decide, all right, we are willing to process your the proceed to the next stage, and then you appoint us to become your the agent or the consultant, and then we will take over the application from the assessment onwards. So then we will help you to get your skill assessments done, identify your occupation, then go through your EOIs, the expression of interest, state trade free sponsorship, then the visa application process, your medicals, and until the visa grants. So I think the process is very clear and very transparent as well. And if you have any more questions, please do type it in or call Anya and ask the questions. We are more than happy to answer that the information. I will now hand over the proceedings back to Anya to bring PTE, the consult, the PTE teacher on board, to give you a bit of understanding how her services will help you in terms of satisfying the language skills. And after that, we'll come back for a Q&A session. Thank you very much. Hope it was a useful and informative session. Thank you. Over to you, Anya.
Thank you very much, Manjula, and Deirdre as well for the detailed session. I hope all our attendees were able to gather a lot of valuable information. Let us now proceed to one other major section that you might face on your pathway to Australian migration. That will be the English test. So let me invite Ms. Amila Gunawardana, who's the certified PTE coach, to give you guys a brief idea of how you can achieve this goal. Over to you, Amila.
Thank you, Anya. Just give me a few minutes to share my screen. Okay, thank you. Right, so PTE, it's the Pearson's Test of English, which is a globally recognized English language exam that you need to do. What you need to do is, it's similar to the IELTS, so either IELTS or PT, but I'll tell you why PT is more advantageous than the IELTS, right? It's actually more common to have the IELTS in Sri Lanka, but it is now getting a little more, people are getting to know about it because it seems slightly easier than the IELTS. So just the same way than the IELTS, the PT is also broken into 4 sections. It has the speaking, writing, reading, and listening sections, and they grade you on these 4 areas. However, it tends to have a little more information in the sense of grading you. They also check you on your grammar, your oral fluency, your pronunciation, spellings, and vocabulary. So these are all interconnected and embedded inside the PT exam itself. The other thing is this exam is cross-functional. So even though they say they are checking you on your speaking, they could be also checking you on your speaking and your reading. So let me explain how this works. Before we move forward, let me just tell you also how the course outline is. It has 20 sections, 20 modules out of the 4 sections. In the 4 sections, it's broken into pieces. So speaking will have a section called read aloud, repeat sentence, describe image, recollection, and answer short questions. So when I say repeat sentence, for example, if you take repeat sentence, this will test not only your speaking, but also your listening skills, because you have to listen to the clip and then repeat it. So it's about memory, it's about how you listen to it, getting used to people's accents, practice. Those kind of things are the ones that will help you to improve your listening. So it breaks into little pieces like this. Another area in the writing, the advantage with this is also writing instead of IELTS. Writing, it has essay writing and summarized written text, which is only 2 areas, whereas IELTS has more, which has a comprehension and interview-based thing. Whereas in this, it's only 2 areas, which is summarized written text and write essay. The essay writing is also very simple. It's very structured. And if you can articulate your points in a logical manner within that structure, you are able to score more points, right? The other thing is the essay writing, you only will have 1 or 2 essays, whereas in IELTS, you can have a little more, maybe even a 3rd essay sometimes. So most often in PT, you'll have 1 essay or on a rare case 2. You have the reading section as well, which is broken into 5 sections where you have multiple choice questions where you have to answer. You have to read a passage and answer the questions. Then there are reorder paragraphs where you have a passage given to you where the paragraphs are mixed up and you have to reorder it. So I will teach you on the skills and techniques of how to identify when you're reordering a paragraph, on clues how to look at when you're reading, what are the things, because sometimes you might not have all the time to read the entire thing. So it's about managing your time and how best you can read and get through this section. Speaking section, the listening section has 8 other sections, subsections. This again, listening is a skill which can be developed over time. I will teach you the tricks of how to improve your listening skills. If you're not a listener, well, there are ways you can improve it. So these are the sections, again, similar to the reading, where you have to listen to a passage and answer multiple choice questions and highlight correct summaries, select missing words. So these are just to give you an idea of what the program is like, right? So it's 20 modules. You get about 90 to 97 questions in this, and it's similar to the IELTS. It's a 3-hour program, rather 3-hour exam. You have a 10 minutes break in the middle. So it's considered 3 parts because speaking and writing goes as 1 section, reading goes as a 2nd section, and listening goes as a 3rd section. So you break the exam in the middle after the speaking and the writing section with a 10 minutes break, and you continue on, right? The difference with PT is it's a totally computer generated exam, unlike in IELTS. Let me go into details onto the next slide, and I will describe what the advantages of this and why it works better. This is just to give you an idea of the comparison of, if you look at when you compare the scoring, when you say 6, you want to get 6 in IELTS, it's 50 in PT academic because it's scored out of 100. So this is just to give you an idea of how it works. So if you get an 8, like Manjula said, you can get 20 points, which you're looking at about a 79. It's not 100% difficult to get, but it can be worked around, provided you really work hard at it and you manage this technique. So I'll help you with all of that. So just to tell you about the PT exam itself, unlike in the IELTS, this is totally computer-based. You use artificial intelligence to give you your scoring. So it's based on an algorithm. So the computer is kind of looking for the specific answers, which I will teach you on how to answer to the computer. So it's not as difficult. Whereas in IELTS, you have to break the exam into 2 sections. Your speaking section, you have to physically go and have an interview with a particular person. So sometimes when you do these kind of interviews with people, there could be biasness involved. I mean, you are nervous, they are nervous. Whereas in the PT, it's very straightforward. It's just you and yourself with the laptop, and you just talk to the computer. So either you know it or you don't know it. The other advantage with PT is that the results come within 5 days, maximum 5 days. Sometimes it comes within 24 hours or 48 hours, which is a good thing because it gives you time to really work on the next areas if you want to. So once they score you, if you haven't got the required results, you can always take another week or two of work and really work at it and then sit for the exam again. So, I mean, it doesn't matter how many times you sit for the exam. You can do mock exams as well before you start the main exam. The course fee is also similar to the IELTS. It's 165 US dollars. I think IELTS is 160 if I'm not mistaken. And the scores can be sent as many times to any of the governing bodies, whether it's the immigration department or whether it's a university. You can send the scores as much as you want. So how I work with is I will have, it's flexible schedules. We teach in the evenings or during the day or even on weekends. Each session is 60 to 90 minutes. You can cover this entire 20 module program with 8 to 10 lessons over a period of 4 weeks. And I charge 25,000 rupees per person. Right. So for more information, you can visit our website. That is www.schoolofpte.com. You can take a picture of this if you want to email me or contact me. Right. So feel free to ask any questions. We'll be happy to help you at the end of this. Thank you very much. Anya, over to you.
Thank you very much, Shamila. We are now ready to take the Q&A session for the evening. I see there's a lot of questions and I believe our team has already responded to most of it. Manjula, there's one question for you. What is the success ratio if you are eligible?
I mean, if you're eligible and if you know that you have your occupation is on the list and you have the required number of points, I mean, it's a very black and white thing. Either you qualify, you don't qualify. There's nothing to say that there is no issue. You're not throwing your hat in the ring and waiting for some miracle to happen, because you just need to identify and go after your goal. And maybe you might have to drop the visa standards that you're looking for, maybe from a permanent visa to temporary visa, where you can expedite the application process, right? And if you're a genuine applicant, there is a very good chance or very good possibility that you can obtain your the visa down the line. You just have to be very mindful and focus and make sure that you go through the phases to obtain your visa at the end of it. It's not a lottery. So it's hard work. You got to work with your application. You got to study hard to in terms of prove your work experience, prove your language skills, and then you have the right qualifications. Then it's anyone's game. It's open for anyone. There are no favoritism systems, or there are no other unforeseen forces that will help you to get your migration. So it's just a very simple, open, level playing field for anyone from anywhere in the world to be able to come through the system to get into Australia. I mean, that is one of the reasons why Australia is so successful. The country is only 120 years old, right? And just go back and see, they are the champions of everything. They are the champions of world rugby, world cricket. They have the world hockey champs, and then they produce so many swimmers, so many Olympians, right? What is the reason for one country to have all these things within such a short period? It's the system. So it's the same system that is applicable for migration as well, right? The Australian government uses Australian migration. They call it like a tap, because they can squeeze from the areas where they don't want migrants, and they can increase where they want more migrants to come into the system as and when they have, because they are a privileged place. Australia is the most sought after migrants, the country in the world at the moment, right? And as example, if you say in today's pandemic situation, Australian government has already suddenly has turned up to so much of liking for business migrants. So business migration has taken so much precedence over other migration categories, right? So starting from 1st of July, there's a new legislation that's coming in. They're increasing the intake for migrants per year to about 15,000. So out of the 79,000 migrants that they are planning to take for next financial year, they are going to take 15,000 of them are going to be business migrants. So if there's a business migrant, this is a great time to apply to come through the system as well. And in this time period, in saying that, during the pandemic, all of a sudden what they did was they took off most of the occupations, trade organizations, trade occupations off, and then they brought in medical professionals into the front. So they were given more priority. So the migration, they use it to the advantage of the country. So that's the beauty and the advantage that Australia has. They can pick and choose which occupation is going to get president in which time. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Manjula. There's one more question. Can they eliminate a person at invitation stage as well?
Of course they can, because the invitation stage is the most lucrative stage, right? Once you are invited, that means your place is already set. So if you are being invited based on the information that you have provided on your EOI, so you got to make sure you submit the right and correct information through your UI. If there's a difference between what you have submitted into an expression of interest and to the once you have been invited and then you lodge the application, and there's a difference between the two, obviously you are going to get knocked back, because they're selecting your criteria of what you are saying in your UI. They are not going to check it. They're not going to check whether you have done your IELTS, whether you have got your skill assessment, whether you have got the right work experience, whether you are claiming that your bachelor's degree has like these subjects covered. They're not going to go into that, or they're not going to drill in to see whether your work experience is genuine at that point. But when they give you an offer, and when you lodge your application, and after paying your application fee, then only they get activated. Then they will check to see, okay, what you have claimed to be who you are at the stage of expression of interest. Okay, let's see whether you can deliver it. So if it is the same information and it's genuine information, you don't have to worry about it.
Okay, we
So that's
have.
why it's very important. Sorry, Anya. That's why it's very important, before you lodge your expression of interest, you first plan your application process, decide what you want to do, where you want to be. You go to pre-plan in 3 years what the Australian government is going to be, I mean, where the government going to drive in terms of occupation, which state is going to give you the opportunity, and look at all that, and then decide, okay, this is the occupation I'm going to go for, and then lodge your application.
Okay. There's one more question, Manjula. Okay, here it goes. I have a 457 visa as a chef. So I have been working for 2.5 years in Melbourne. Unfortunately, I came to Sri Lanka 21st of August in 2020. 8 months already stuck overseas, and he has already got his COVID vaccines last week. So how can I go back to Australia?
All right. Now, in your case, what happens is you fall into the temporary visa category. The current overseas legislation is that even for the permanent resident or a citizen to return to Australia, you have to get a travel exemption done, right? So for you to get a travel exemption to come into Australia, you have to have a compelling and a passionate reason. So I think it depends on the reason why you went out of the country in the first place, and what desire that you have to get back into the country will decide on where you stand. So that's a one-to-one question. So if you share your details with me on a by email, or arrange a consultation, we can go through and see whether you have compassionate and compelling reasons to get an exemption to return back to Australia before the expiry of your visa. But because it's an employee sponsored visa, you have a very good chance of getting it, because your employer is in need of you coming and performing the work, yeah, to start with. So that's one line that you can take to look for exemption.
All right. We'll take the last question for the day. Is there any clue about the date where Australia opened their borders for students?
Earlier there was a talk that they are going to open from this July. Now they are going to push it back, because the Melbourne just went for a lockdown and came out of it today. And I'm sorry, I don't have answers to that question, because no one knows. It depends on where this pandemic goes. Australia just started their vaccination programs to the wider community. So until they are 100% satisfied with their local management, I don't think they will open it any sooner. Now, unfortunately, I don't think so. They'll open it. I mean, my personal opinion. I'm in no privy to say anything about it, but I don't think they'll open it for the next 3 months for sure.
Thank you, Manjula. We have a lot more questions and most of them are already answered online. We have a few questions remaining, but I don't think time will permit us to do so. I will request you to please send us your questions on email. I will share our contact details with you all right now. So you can send us all your inquiries. We will individually reply to all of them. Just a few minutes, I will share the contact details with you all right now. Okay, so we are coming towards the end of the session today. I would like to thank all of you who joined us for today's session. I hope it was a very useful and a fruitful session for all of you who are interested in migrating to Australia. Please do not hesitate to send us your inquiries to the given contact numbers, email address, or we are also available on WhatsApp on the given details, and we'll be happy to help you. Hope you have a pleasant evening, and thank you so much once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.